On this episode, we talk about finding your why and how you can expand your brand. Welcome to another episode of Inside the League. I have with me today Zach Colman of Creatitive. Thanks so much for coming on, Zach.
Thanks for having me on.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you came to form Creatitive.
Long story short, my dad was an NFL player. He played in the league way before I was born as a kicker. And growing up, he had me kind of take the ins and outs of soccer and kind of somewhat try to follow in his footsteps a little bit. And as I continued to go through my adult life, I kind of found another purpose. I started to realize I needed to take my own path a little bit away from my dad and find my own direction and everything that I was trying to do with my life. And I became very fascinated with visual communications and messaging and all that nifty stuff. And, went and got a bachelor's degree of science in visual communications from down here, good old ASU. And through that, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with, the foundational elements of how you can communicate in this vast world. And as I continued through the corporate world, I started working for some NFL players. I worked for the Phoenix Suns as a art director for about 2 years, and kind of started seeing the ins and outs of sports. Probably really pushed me towards continuing my other passion, which was, athletes and, continuing to improve myself through, personal development and things of that nature. And I eventually decided one day, it took me about a year to do so, but, to go out on my own, decided I was ready to kind of push out. And, growing an agency, Creative has evolved. I was a, freelancer while I was in the corporate world, and eventually kind of learned certain services and got certain things in. But it really evolved towards, as we continue to grow the agency, it's my purpose is continuing to grow. I'm continuing to find, different directions and what my path is going. I think it's a thing with every business owner, very similar to athletes as they continue to evolve and develop their purpose and grow through college, NFL or MLB or whatever professional league it is in. But, finding that purpose. And so as we continue to evolve, our agency is kind of starting to really focus on, branding, really big on branding. I tend to see a lot of people really just not really understanding what branding is. There's just so many things out there that really say, oh, branding is this and branding's that. It can be very intimidating. So we are really focused on at Creative, or we consider ourselves a motivation and grit focused branding agency. And really that is just because we're really big on the consulting side and the education side for these sports and athletic companies. So at the very end of the day, our main goal really is just to help sports and athletic driven businesses find their why through brand identity and digital experiences.
So if you had to boil down what brand is, if you had to give kind of a one-liner, what is brand?
Branding really in my aspect is finding the purpose of you as a personal brand or you as a corporate brand, either or, taking that brand and finding your purpose, finding your aha moment, and then delivering that purpose and showcasing that purpose through the world, to the world. And it could be several different components in that. It could be messaging, it could be visuals, it could be marketing, which is, a subset of branding, but there's so many different aspects in that. But overall, it really is just to help find your purpose. Like, what is the purpose and how do you make that come to life and then deliver that to your specific audience that you're trying to work with?
So almost figuring out what your offering is, what you bring to the table as a person or as a business, and
Mhm.
then how do you amplify that so people know about it instead.
Subconsciously, yes. I tend to tell everyone, like, think about that. Think about that. Brand loyalty is something very much in there, and experiences are in there. Like when you're driving down the street and you're thinking about getting gas, there's just 80 different gas stations on the corner, and you can go to, what usually happens, and why do they do that? Brand recognition. And people usually subconsciously go to the brands that they're loyal to. And
Right.
so, very similar to what you said, you take all that and you subconsciously try to reach an audience in a way that communicates to them their pain points.
So, do you think that leagues cater more to athletes who have a brand following, whether it's directly monetarily or whether it's through more attention? Do you think an athlete having a brand has advantages?
I do. I do. I think there's a couple other things there. And of course, age is really, really dependent on that a little bit. But I would say that, a lot of leagues today, I mean, sports is a business, at the end
Yes.
of the day. And so I tell athletes all the time, the college athletes, the professional athletes we work with, hey, you really need to think about what you're doing as more of a business than you're looking at it more as a career, because you are kind of very similar to, any other business out there. You're taking on a contract and they're your vendor, so
Mhm.
um,
Mm.
when it comes to leagues, in general, you see a lot of players that, on Twitter or on other platforms, that will do something wrong, or they do something that they shouldn't necessarily be doing, that do well, that would help the team out. And so if we go back to the core of branding, and finding your purpose and finding what you really want to do, not just in the game but outside the game, it's really about defining that purpose and building a solid foundation for an audience.
Yeah.
So sports teams in general don't always look at the most talented, because if you think about it, leadership and building yourself and your purpose is going to help the rest of the team. It's going to be someone that's going to help the rest of the team grow as well. And so, very similar to a business, they're looking at people that have their feet on the ground, have a good passion, have a good purpose, and not just looking to go out there and make a quick buck. And I know it's a lot more in depth than that, but yeah, so building your brand and your purpose. And I mean, I could go into a couple examples if you'd want me to, but overall, teams are at that point now where they can tell the difference between, not good followers. I mean, like bad followers or fake followers. I'll just say fake followers, and or even I mean, me as a consumer and other sports fans that are consumers, they can see right behind these days on, athletes that are promoting brands that they're like, dude, I don't even think this athlete owns this brand. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, it really drops conversion. And so, going back to that whole business aspect. So, back to your original question. Yes, I think that the more it's not always about followers. I try to tell athletes it's not always about followers. It's about the quality of your followers, how
Mhm.
engaging they are, how much you're interacting with them, compared to what you're trying to give your purpose. And times are changing, and teams are starting to really look at that kind of stuff, not just from a uh, monetary standpoint from their position as a team, but also as is this player making good choices, so we
Mm.
know that he's going to be coming in and being a
Like
solid
an asset.
leader for the team.
Yeah. I think one of the things you said that I haven't heard before is for an athlete to think of themselves as you're a business and the league is your vendor. You have a contract with them. And I think that's so helpful, especially because the lifespan of an athlete is usually, as low as 3 years if you're in the
Yeah, I
NFL.
think it's 2 to
Um,
3.
5, we have our outliers like LeBron and Tom Brady, but typically they thinking about them as your vendor because you have kind of a window of time to maximize the benefit to you. So, and not necessarily coming to them with like, oh my God, I'm so honored to be here. Although we want to be grateful for everything, but they are your vendor. And so making them work to your advantage, I think that's really smart to think about. One of the things that you don't hear often in the land of branding is talk about websites. You always hear about social and being on social media and posting. Do you think that a website still benefits an athlete?
Well, it's funny you say that because I think as I've been growing my business and finding my purpose, there's a lot of, because I'm a very technical guy. I mean, I'm a creative guy, but I don't know if you've ever taken any of those large, culture index or anything like that. But I'm considered a technical expert, so I kind of have best of both worlds when it comes to, getting certain things done. And I really pushed to get athletes to understand that the website is what's in their control. Like that is their hub.
Okay.
The problem I normally see is the athletes don't find their why. So what ends up happening is a lot of the athletes that come to us, they have a website that's all over the place. They're showing stats over here. They're trying to do crowdfunding over here. They're trying to sell products over here. And I'm like, if someone comes to your website, like, what is the purpose for them coming to your website? And so I would say, yes, I would say a website is their hub. I would say they should really focus on it being a personal brand and even evolving it into a corporate brand down the road, if they tend to evolve it and towards something they want, even down to local search optimization and all those other platforms. Blogging was a huge one I was really trying to promote for athletes because I was like, hey, like you could easily have your own platform to write and be able to tell your story through your own platform. And then, yes, you could recycle that on social if you want, but really finding their why through their website is key. And so for a lot of college athletes, for instance, for us, it's really prone on. I'll be honest with them, like, you don't need a website yet. Like, you don't need you do, but you don't need like a full-fledged apparel store or a full-fledged crowdfunding store. I'm like, that's just not needed with where you're at. Maybe down the road as you evolve and you start, building something out and building your why out and coming up with a game plan. But really at the end of the day, it's usually, a profile type account where they can kind of go on, maybe show kind of a resume of who they are, a little bit about their brand from a visual perspective or a written perspective, and could have a blog, but overall, like, focus on that first, and evolve it over time. But
Yeah.
I definitely think that websites are still to this day something that athletes could really take advantage of. They just need to have the right strategy, to be honest, is what it really comes down to.
Yeah, so I think thinking about a website as a hub is very interesting, not necessarily as a place where you're driving everyone to or another thing that you have to do all the time. But like you said, think of it as a place where, hey, this is just to get to know me. This is one place where I control the narrative. I mean, you control your social, but you have all this feedback about it. But this is the one place that I have a seamless experience of who I am. And then even if, in terms of blog, that could be intimidating about people writing, but now you can use AI to say, here are my thoughts, and then make them into a blog. So that's something that you can take advantage of. And I also think having that local aspect, like what are you doing in the community, could be what your blog feeds are about, because that looks good for colleges. Pro leagues love that kind of stuff. Like you can be the local hero. So them seeing that you do that already, I think is a leg up. In terms of strategy and e-commerce, you touched on, you don't think a college athlete has to have their merch out the gate. But if you're thinking about, e-commerce or having an extension of your brand that's a product, what would you start with if you're an athlete?
Well, that's funny you say that because that's kind of our specialty. We focus fully on athletic driven e-commerce brands, not just the athletes, but we also focus on the athletic athletic apparel companies as well. So one thing that, with some of the athletes that we have worked with is you really have to think about with the way drop shipping is now these days, in the way that all these other, companies are out to make things easy for you. That could definitely be a good start, but you always have to worry about compromising your brand recognition and loyalty and things of that nature, because everyone sees those products. And so comes back to the main thing that I like to preach all the time is one of the main ways to really grow your brand is building experiences for your audience. Like in today's world of everything going online, experiences have by far become a lot more important. And not just athletes, but in sports in general. One of the reasons we got in this field was because we've seen a lack of it. And it's no one's fault. There's just no one out there to preach, hey, like, you need to build these experiences. Think of yourself as a business, So when it comes to products, we always recommend, hey, like, if you're really going to do this, like, really do it. Like, save up, build your own product, build your own apparel line, build your own this and that, and go about it that way. Yes, you're going to be spending a lot more investment up front in building your brand and doing it that way as a strategy instead of drop shipping. But the difference is that you will have very little expenses compared to drop shipping. Drop shipping takes like 80% of everything. There's not even enough to market. So in there to market. And so you get in this trapped situation, and then you also get clients getting their experience of getting the products late or only lasting like 3 or 4 days. And then it tarnishes retention rate and all that nifty stuff. And so I really evolved, like, for instance, we just worked with an MLB player and we created them a backpack. But we went through the whole brand development phase that we did it around his passions. What do you like to do as an athlete? And what do you want to represent? How do you want your brand to be represented? And so we went through and developed him a whole product line that they launched, and it was around him and his personality at the end of the day, And so I think that's the key for a lot of athletes. Like, if you're really going to go the route of building an apparel line, don't look at it as, hey, this is a side hustle. I think with any athlete, no matter what business venture they go into outside the game, that's why they really need to find their purpose, because if they can find their purpose, they will persevere and they will be able to grow that other passion the way they want to.
Do you think that apparel is the place to start? Or are there other products that you think are lower hanging fruit?
Apparel probably going to be the easiest. Like, yes, I wouldn't recommend a college athlete to go out there and build their own backpack. That's why I brought up the drop shipping.
Yeah.
There could be if you're just starting out. Yes, I would think t-shirts and other things around that athletic apparel situation that you really work. But it comes back to finding your purpose. And so, but from a cost perspective, that's probably going to be your best option. Because does anyone have $20,000 to $40,000 to go out there and build a new water bottle? No, but sometimes those risks are what's needed to grow a brand that you want, And so I think it really goes back to what we talked about with athletes looking at what they're doing as a business. They invest, they save. That's great. I really recommend they do that. But looking at themselves as a business, they're basically going into sports for 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years. We see a lot of athletes that are like, I'm just focused on the sport right now. I don't have time to run this. And I'm like, well, just so you're aware, if you were a business owner, you'd be worrying about your clients' marketing, or you're getting clients. You'd be working about, paying your employees. You'd be worrying about this. So I'm like, you can just dedicate time management around it. And so I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think overall, yes, I think apparel probably is a good start if that's the direction and the purpose you want to go is.
And how far do you separate that from drop shipping? Because are you thinking they're sourcing their own manufacturer and they're sourcing their fabrics and they're, obviously having their logo. But how far of a separation do you see apparel from the normal drop shipping? Or are you like, hey, you find an actual, a printing place that will legitimately print your t-shirts? I guess, like, what lane of apparel should they go down?
So there's really two options. Yeah, drop shipping does everything, but it's very overpriced because you're paying for the convenience, which is great for some people. So
Right.
sometimes we will say, like, create your own product, create one or two of your own products. That will already be a costly venture for you. Maybe you add some custom drop shipping items in there that we attach to your brand in some sort of way, and we add that because it also looks very sketchy from a user experience standpoint when someone only has one product on their website. So no one really trusts a company if they're going on there like, oh, this isn't legit. They only have one product. So you do need to be strategic about it up front. And if you have to add some drop shipping items, I totally agree with doing that. I think the problem is that people tend to just 100% say, let's focus on drop shipping. It should be an evolution. But the other route, and an agency like ours, what we do, and that's part of what we do, we have the manufacturers that we will get in contact with. I work with the industrial designers that create the product and work with you on the fabrics, and storage. If we have to find a storage utility, we can. But for the most part, if you're a college athlete or you're a professional athlete that's looking to hustle, throw them in your garage for the time being, and save out on that cost, and then just send them out product one by one yourself. And if you look at a lot of e-commerce stores, that's what they end up doing for the first couple of years, is they're shipping everything out of their house. So there's nothing wrong with that either. But we would help, like companies like ours that focus on that would help you source those to the point you may not even need to talk to them by any means, but just kind of run through the numbers and figure all that stuff out.
Got it. What are maybe 2 or 3 questions you think a person could ask to determine what their why is?
Ooh, we really like to go off the grit scale. So it's really one of those situations where you kind of we have to write down, and we go through a whole brand discovery process to help that with clients. But really at the end of the day, I think it comes down to a couple things. What are you doing right now in college that you're passionate about? So are you just picking communications because you feel like that's the route to go? Or are you finding a degree that on something that you're passionate about? So
Mhm.
for instance, if you're going to school for veterinarian, great. Let's find a way to combine both your two passions together.
Got
So I think number one is what are you doing outside the game that you're very passionate about? If it be a college degree, if it be cooking. I mean, I think Alex Mack is a great example of retiring and then becoming a cooker, like starting to do cooking on the side.
Mhm.
And I think that shows how he's combining both his two passions together. And so find something that you really love to do outside the game and then
Right.
leverage that. And then number two, okay, what within what within that passion do you like? Like what is it within that you like? I mean, as you think about using Alex Mack as an example again, like he could have went multiple directions with his cooking. He could have
Right.
opened a grocery store. He could have, become a cook. He could have done everything. So kind of let's sit down and say, okay, what would you like to do within that passion? What
Mhm.
seems like you like to do? What is your and then lastly, I think it's really then, using the grit scale and kind of coming up with, okay, what looks like a good solid 10-year goal for you. It doesn't have to be solidified. Everything in the 5 and the 1 year goals will shift dramatically over the years, but
Yes.
kind of going through and picking that 5 year goal, those 5 year goals in the one. And so kind of sitting through and saying, all right, do you have those goals in place? And if not, let's sit down and help you develop some of those goals as an individual as you continue to grow.
Right. So it sounds like it's pretty much, what do you like? why do you like it, and what do you want to do with it? Kind of boiling
Mhm.
it down to those three as at least a jumping off point to figure out what your brand is. Zach, tell everyone where they can find you and what you're up to next.
Well, like I said, we're at the point where we're evolving. We're becoming mostly a branding agency ourselves. We're trying to start adding on education. So we have educational material and courses coming out on our website, which you can find on creative.com. Within those courses, we're going to start putting different courses up involving, our first course is honestly on just motivation and grit and how to find your passion and how to become a leader. And then our second course is going to be on time management and so on and so forth. So we're continuing to create courses throughout the few years. You're more than welcome to email us or go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter on the homepage in regards to the courses. And besides that, we're really looking to evolve our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, which is you can just find on Creative. We're starting to really get into the next steps of our YouTube channel. It used to be fully educational, and now we're kind of trying to entertain the possibilities of motivation and motivational type videos, and even some entertainment ones in there too, giving people examples of other athletes and things of that nature. So you can find us at Creative through YouTube. And I think lastly, as I keep evolving and I'm trying to deliver my purpose, one of the things that is on our goal this year is we are really I'm really starting to build my personal brand. We're going out and going to do public speaking gigs. Hopefully a TED Talk is in the near future. So knock on wood for that. Trying to prepare for that. And we're trying to go out and do public speaking. So if anyone knows of any schools or any corporations that are looking to bring in, someone to speak to the students about corporate branding and NIL and all that nifty stuff, hit me up and we can talk.
Cool. Well, thank you, Zach, so much for being on Inside the League and giving real insights around websites and expanding your brand. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.